Other yellow hat guy here, back with another video. And man, what a year. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Let's get into it. And why am I making this? I could write this down in a diary. I'm not saying I still won't, like a journal or something like that. But this is one of those years that, it feels like science fiction. It feels like a novel. It feels like up to this point, looking back, I'd be like, this stuff really happened? So, number one, I want to say thank you for watching. Number two, get some snacks, some popcorn. This may be interesting for you. It may not be, because if you're watching this now, you've lived through this. If you have not and you're watching this in the future, you'll probably get the most out of it because you're hearing somebody who was at this present time telling you about it. So we started out this year with a lot of promise, okay? 2020. You remember that TV show 2020? A lot of video games like Raid 2020. 2020 is like, Back to the Futurist kind of. Futurish? No, we don't have flying skateboards and stuff like that. Hoverboards, excuse me. We don't have time machines. But we do have echo dots that schedule things for us and talk to us and set the temperature. Alexa, turn on vacuum, right? So I say things like that. Alexa, turn off Frank. And, it will charge up devices, turn on lights. Alexa, turn off living room light. All right, so that lighting is off. And it's not to say this is exclusive to 2020. I just want to give you an idea of what right now people, that might be standard. The norm. Me growing up, that was not. You had to get up and manually turn off stuff. You had remote controls. You had, that was cool. But phones, you still had cords for. Now we all have cell phones. We all have these communicator devices like Star Trek with us. So we don't have all that other stuff that these movies and games promise, but we've got something, okay? So what's really left field out of everything that we've got going on? Well, like other years that you hear about in the media, music and movies, there's some big entertainer that passes. Now, with technology getting better, you don't hear about plane crashes or car crashes featuring celebrities, right? For every, person that's happening to every day, it's not, going to be a president. It's not going to be a monarch. So not since Princess Diana could I think of some kind of tragic thing happening that involved one of these celebrity type persons. Yes, we've had, 9/11. We've had, lots of, little tragedies and things like that have happened. And while all equally sad, you don't get reminded of them, say for 9/11, like you do, this one that happened, January this year, and that was with Kobe Bryant, okay? The basketball player, the American icon. There's controversy there with how you honor somebody who was, cut down like that. I'm sure there was a lot more that Kobe could have done with his life. Everybody knows that he left behind a wife and children, and I'm not going to get into his personal business here. I think I made a video at some point talking about it briefly, but that's not really my thing. I know if I were to plaster images of people all on my channel and act like I'm starting up stuff, stirring the pot, I'd get more views, but I just haven't brought myself to that. And that's not going to start with this video, okay? What I'm getting at is that was a shock. It was really a shock that happened. Me, myself, personally, when things like that happen, whether it's to some celebrity, sorry, there's fruit flies, 2020. Whether it's a celebrity or just a regular person, everyday person like you or me, I'm like, hey, that could have been prevented. And maybe the celebrity has more control over it because just like with Aaliyah, you know, and that's an example there, right? That was early 2000s. Aaliyah, the singer, in her prime, did something similar. She was supposed to fly from whatever she had going on back to where she was intended to go, and the plane was too heavy to carry both the crew, her people, and the cargo, like the luggage and all that. They chose to fly anyhow, and they didn't make it. So that's another one of those situations where, you know, you could have a commercial flight with people and they don't know all the details. They don't have the choices. Maybe they get asked, hey, you can get off the flight and we'll give you, you know, hotel fees free, or, you know, an extra flight or miles or another trip, or, you know, in the case, you know, some people, hey, we'll offer you a few $1,000. Unless you got to go to a wedding or something important. And, you know, anybody can argue that. You know, most people, it's like, hey, I got to be there this day, you know. And I guess the more celebrity you have, you are making, you know, hey, we're going here, then we're going here, then we're going here. So it's uber important that you get there when you get there, whereas somebody else, unless it's like a family thing or, you know, what have you, can say, hey, I won't be in this day, I'll be in the next day because of whatever, or I'll be there a couple hours late because of whatever. Itinerary can be tricky. And a similar thing happened with Kobe. You know, he was known to have a helicopter and fly around, you know. We often fear plane crashes, but car crashes happen more often because, well, more cars. But I don't know, it feels like you have more control over your car than you do a plane crash, whereas in the plane, you're just utterly helpless. Maybe you've got a parachute or whatever, but in a car, it's like, hey, you can control how, you know, minor it's going to be or what have you. This little gnat thing is really annoying. It just wants to fly in this one little spot when there's other areas in the house it could be. It just wants to be here with me. So I appreciate you could watch any other video right now, but you're choosing to watch mine. So, yeah, Kobe had the option of, you know, driving or maybe going somewhere later, but he was going to do like a basketball thing with his, you know, his team, not the Lakers, but like he's got his own like team with children, with youth that he was doing stuff with. His daughter was, you know, also on this team, and so she flew. And then some other acquaintances and friends were also there. You know, they don't talk about them as much because they weren't Kobe, but, you know, that's what it is. So whether you like Kobe or not, there was other people on this, you know, helicopter that, you know, also lost their lives, and that was just tragic. It happened around the same time. You know, I was working and going through some stuff, a breakup at the time. So I guess how this video will work, I'm going to talk about stuff that happened that was unique to 2020 from like a worldly sense, and then I'll talk about my life as well. So if this is a two-parter, that's why. So the Kobe thing happened, and I didn't have time to really feel sorry for myself and what I was going through, because here's people around me, Lakers fans, just basketball fans, just sports fans, period, just, you know, devastated because he died young. You know, sure, he was done playing basketball professionally, but it ain't to say that he couldn't have laced up some shoes and done one or two more seasons with the team and done something. But it propelled the Los Angeles Lakers months later to go ahead and win the NBA title. You know, LeBron James and some other guys, they used that as motivation, as you thought, and that was the storybook ending there. So basketball ended in the fall and then started again in the fall. Why? Well, COVID-19. Yeah, let's get into COVID-19. That's here. It's still here. There's talks of a vaccine being released as of, you know, the last couple of days, if not this week. And we'll see how that goes. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about COVID because, well, the time thing of the year, if the despite person of the year, is COVID-19. The time person of the year to me should have been the people carrying COVID-19, because the super spreading and what have you is why this year continues to be the way it's been. So before Kobe, you had these drones. People talking about drones. Yeah, drones are popular. Drones allow you to give views of landscapes that you otherwise wouldn't have. They're becoming less and less expensive, so the common person can use them to film, weddings, or get layouts for different buildings to show changes in parking lots. All kinds of things. I've got a buddy who does that. I mean, look at the intros to my videos, at least the Pokemon Go ones. Drone footage. You see the beautiful downtown area of High Point, North Carolina, and that's all done with a drone. So it's one of those things that you don't think about, where, hey, there's regulations. You can't fly those over people, and people are kind of paranoid about them because they're kind of like UFOs, right? If you don't know it's a drone and you're scared, and it could terrify you. So there's rules and regulations over where you could fly them, and you have people just in LA or somewhere, just a collective of drones. And we do drone strikes, right? We've been known here in the US to do drone strikes on other countries. So it can be as helpful as an Amazon package being delivered to your door via drone, or you just taking photos for a wedding, and it can be as dangerous as drones interfering with aircraft, like airplanes and stuff like that, and or military strikes. So yeah, we've talked aircraft, we talked helicopter crashes, and we talked drones. That was all beginning of the year. And then eventually you had a guy flying around with a jetpack on. Yeah, like Rocketeer / Iron Man. I mean, that was part of this year. And while nobody knows who that guy is except for that guy and people who have sworn their secrecy, it wouldn't surprise me if he's going to do it again, because he's flown, around aircraft bases. Maybe not even just the bases, I don't think, but I think, they've called him out saying, hey, we see a guy flying here, blah, 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 blah. So that was a thing this year. And I don't know that I've ever heard of it happening years prior, because you would think if somebody had a bunch of money, they would try to be Batman or be Iron Man. It's like, nah, why? Why not just have fun? What is Jeff Bezos doing with his time? Not being Iron Man. Jeff, if you're watching, where's your suit of armor? Get out there. Jokes aside, so that felt like the first 3 months there. But COVID didn't really hit then until March. We have, I don't know, I guess, yeah, I should say he'll still be president. But we have President Donald Trump in this time, which, is interesting enough because, love him or hate him, he was a reality, or may still be after this is over with, a reality TV star, a businessman, just everything outside of what you think of to be presidential. You can argue with me if you want to, but those are the facts. You hear the name Donald Trump before 2016, you're not thinking president. You're thinking, entertainer. You're thinking businessman. You're thinking of a whole bunch of stuff about his character that is not for me to judge, and I'm not going to start right here in this video. But that's what it is. And this guy became president. So, if you liked Obama and you felt like Obama gave you diversity, he gave you somebody different as president, right? Being the first, quote unquote, African-American president, person of color, somebody different from the 44 presidents prior to him that were all white men. That was something different. So you said, hey, anything is possible if this guy can get in. No. Obama, for better or for worse, was at least commanding with his words and gave you, whether you believed it or not, a sense of this guy is presidential, right? That's my feeling. Trump does not give that, all right, based off of everything prior to that. And for me personally, while he was president, did not give that. And why is any of that important? Well, it's important because at this point it seemed like your character mattered less and what people thought you were capable of doing. You know, you went with potential, not what your history said. It's kind of like applying for a job and saying, "Hey, I can be a fighter. Yeah, I've been a garbage man, so why couldn't I be a fighter?" As if the two are similar. Well, we want somebody to drain the swamp and be different. Well, you know, um, it's debatable on whether or not the swamp was drained, because the whole year intensified with this political drama. But we're going to get back to that later. We're going to get to COVID-19 and how that was handled. See, we had things like SARS, we had things like swine flu, and many more people died through those with the former president, Barack Obama, and, you know, what have you, and his 8-year term. But it was never blown into the proportion of which this COVID-19 was. It started out in Wuhan, China. I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but basically it started out in China, and it's debated on whether or not it was created in a lab or somebody made some bat soup. Yes, I told you this was going to be a crazy video. Ingested that or got infected, and then it made its way here. And it seemed like something out of science fiction, but at the same time, that was a third world problem or second world problem, not a first world problem, until it became a first world problem, right? First world problem where you have people visiting China and taking a flight here, and it has a 2-week incubation week. So for those of you not in the know, it's COVID-19 because it's the 19th COVID, right? The flu is a COVID. Man, I wish this little gnat would just get out of my way, messing up my video. The 19th of that variation. So the symptoms, you know, vary from person to person, it seemed like, in the beginning. And some people, it turns out, could be asymptomatic. And what they would do, believe it or not, was have a temperature gun to determine whether or not you were above the 99.8 or 6 or whatever it is that's supposed to be normal. You know, I remember going to jobs and still being sick, but go because I need that paycheck. And the job was never like, stay home. You had to, I don't feel well, call in and ask for time off. And they may or may not have given it to you based off of what kind of job this was. You know, you could have kids and the kids are sick and get you sick, but you're still going to work. And you were supposed to be staying away from people, and people knew you were sick but didn't think anything of it. They just kind of stayed away from you as long as you got your work done. Now those days are probably long gone. If you just look like you're sick with the flu, folks don't care. You've got to stay home. And the comedian Dave Chappelle said, hey, he said it just what I'm telling you right now. When it first came out, the COVID-19, or at least when it became a pandemic, right? Because it was out for a little bit before it was announced. But President Trump didn't want you to know that it was a pandemic. He wanted to downplay it because he didn't want to cause mass panic. And when it was revealed, it was like, well, it's not going to be that serious. They're not going to shut the economy down, right? This is quote unquote what Dave was saying, but what a lot of us was thinking, myself included. It was just another Tuesday. It's like, oh, it's over there in China. 1 or 2 people got it. They'll figure out a way, and we'll continue business as usual. Well, that didn't happen. 2 weeks shut down the economy, and in those 2 weeks, we'll quarantine, we'll all stay home from our jobs, and it should go away. Mass hysteria. People started buying up the milk, bread, and cheese and all that. But then they also started buying up toilet paper en masse. I myself, I didn't buy up a whole bunch of toilet paper. I bought a bidet. Yeah, a bidet. To save on toilet paper, to reduce the amount of toilet paper I was consuming. I didn't really buy one. I bought an attachment to make my existing toilet a bidet. And that was a very good decision for me because, well, I just think they're cleaner. I know some people think they're weird and have hang-ups around stuff touching their bottom area, but, it's working for me. So however you feel is however you feel. But people are going crazy buying toilet paper and trying to extort people by saying, hey, you want toilet paper? It's going to cost you X amount of dollars, buying it in bulk. And, you know, scalping is nothing new, but it's been grossly magnified under a lens in 2020 because when you can't go to work and make money, you can't hustle, people are resorting to this. And, you know, if you're in the video games, which I'm assuming you are if you're watching this, you know, channel other than these videos, these storytime videos, you'll know I've talked PS5 ad nauseum for a while. And now that it's here, I don't even have one. And it's not because I don't necessarily want one. It's because I ultimately know I don't need one. 500 is not what I'm willing to pay, and it's fine if you are. But people scalping them or selling them for $1,000, and some people hate that. Some people are like, "Hey, that's awesome." I'm somewhere in the middle where it's like, "Hey, good for you if you found somebody that's going to buy it." But for me in my house, I'll wait for the kids who are going to pawn them at pawn shops to get them. I know there's going to be a revision and blah, 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 blah. Was there going to be another batch of toilet paper? Most certainly. But if you gave into fear, if you gave into panic, if you gave into FOMO, right? This was not the year for you. COVID is said to affect those who are elderly the most. So mom, grandma, depending on how old they are, well, you don't want to give them the COVID, kids. But how do you tell that to a 5-year-old who's used to just playing in the mud or, you know, shaking hands with all their friends and just touching random objects and not being sanitary like you're supposed to be? How do you tell that to teenagers who constantly want to go to the movies and the beach and bars that, hey, no birthday parties this year, no hanging out at the arcade bars, you know, how do you tell that to people? So what it revealed to you with this COVID was that people say, oh, you know, I'd survive a zombie apocalypse. You couldn't stay inside for 2 weeks. And so it just kept spreading. Oh, I'd avoid that like the plague, right? No, you wouldn't, because this is pretty much a plague, but you have half of the country, and this unfortunately falls under the president. Half of the country here, and I can only speak for U.S., I don't know how other countries handle it, but evidently they've handled it better, some of them, than we did. Again, this is not open to a political debate. That's not what the point of this video is. These are just the facts as I know them to be. Over 200,000 deaths, 250,000, something crazy like that. Are they all because of COVID? Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't work for CDC. I'm not a scientist or a nurse. But what I can tell you is that what is reported was that you have some people who had pre-existing conditions, diabetes, you know, breathing issues, whatever, that it just basically doubles down on you. It's kind of like HIV, right? HIV is not what kills you. It's when it's full-blown AIDS that you're killed. You know, you die from that. But if you already have something like pneumonia or what have you, it just weakens your immune system, so you succumb to it. Whereas an able-bodied, healthy person, you might get over the COVID in a couple weeks, right? Just staying home by yourself and, you know, eating a lot of good food and what have you, you're going to be fine. But some people, it was like, you know, a friend, she got it and she described it as, like it felt like when she would breathe, like she was breathing water. Sharp pains in her chest. And, you know, this person had a stroke earlier in the year, you know, or I should say not early in the year. This was summertime when she had it, and or summertime when she had a stroke, and then beginning of fall, she ended up getting COVID going to Florida. So again, these small gatherings, you know, is what was recommended, but they turn into big gatherings, and what we probably needed was just no gatherings for like a month because people don't listen. But that's just my opinion. So I've had to avoid being around a large group of people. Y'all know me from these Pokemon Go videos. What I would like to do is be the man on the street, walking downtown, being at, you know, different settings and recording footage. Couldn't really do that as effectively. They had curfews, you know, lockdown is pretty much what it was for a while. You couldn't be out unless you were an essential worker. What was an essential worker? An essential worker is somebody who was essential. What COVID proved to you was not only do people not listen, But the jobs that pay the least are the most essential, save for the nurses and what have you, the healthcare providers. But people who are out here, the fast food workers, the people providing food, people providing, toiletries, the Walmarts, all the retail, those folks aren't being paid what other jobs are being paid, like, my engineering job, but they still had to go to work. The government gave out $1,200 checks, stimulus checks here in the U.S. for every person. A lot of people who were no longer here still got checks somehow. If you had child support issues, you didn't get a check. If you had IRS issues, you did not get a check either. But hey, first time I can remember the government giving out a lump sum of money like that. Months later from that happening, that's really not a lot of money. $1,200, some places that might have been enough to pay your rent. Maybe you had a roommate or something like that. $300, y'all split. Maybe $300 lasted you 4 months. But maybe you live somewhere else where, your mortgage was $1,200. Well, that got you through a month, but the hope was you were only going to be on lockdown for a month. Here we are, where restrictions were, at least in my area, lifted and then now imposed again. And now they're saying, oh, it's the worst number of cases than it's been, since the COVID has happened. It's crazy. But again, a lot of that is people not believing it's a real thing. And then even more gross are the people who know it's a real thing but just don't care. I've got friends who we have different political views, but we're still friends. I don't believe that your politics should cause you to stop being friends, but this is a case where people feel that their lives are at stake, and you've got to respect that, even if you don't agree with it. Putting on a mask is not taking away your rights. You might believe that, but it's not. I don't think that it's that serious, but that's why we haven't, gone through this yet. It's a thing where, hey, I feel personally, just try the mask. Even if it sounds silly, try it. And if it doesn't work, then we know it doesn't work and we try something else. But if you don't play ball, we'll never know, and we'll keep trying the mask stuff until we figure out that there's a more effective way. But you have to try. You have to be willing to try, or at least if you're not wanting to try, stay home. Stay home. People who have their lives threatened. They've had their lives threatened because people have come out of the stores saying, hey, man, can you put a mask on? No, I ain't putting no mask on. Well, you can't come in the store. What? Boom, 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 boom. Really? Really? You can order groceries online. Curbside pickup, they have that for that reason. A lot of these things have increased because of that. Me, lost a lot of my income. About 40% of my income. I'm not door dashing, I'm not Ubering, I'm not delivering pizzas. All that I do on the side, right? What stepped up in place of that is these YouTube videos. And it's a fraction of what those things brought in. And, never mind that, with my job as an engineer, I can't go into the office and haven't been for most of the year. They tried to let us go in, but 15 people got it, and that was it. Stay home. I'm lucky to still have some kind of income, but I could have made so much more money. But we'll talk about what I was able to do with my opportunities later on, right? So getting back to COVID, it was a pandemic, and it felt like there have been more serious things. Like, you hear COVID-19, you would probably expect it to be something like, oh, you got some kind of gas or something that you inhaled and boom, you keeled over. It didn't work that way. What made it tricky is that you don't know that you got it. Not everybody's going to feel it the same. And it could take a week to manifest itself. So you went to a party, somebody breathed on you, or you exchanged air with each other because neither of you were wearing a mask, and then you go to a family function and didn't know you were sick or whatever. Now you gave grandma or mom COVID, and they're in the hospital fighting for their life, and they didn't have adequate insurance, health care, all that to begin with. How do you live with yourself then? Or do you even care? Because it felt like part of the country said, you know what? My life, you're imposing on my freedoms, and I need to get back to work, and the economy's suffering. I guess that's more important than your family. As long as it's not happening to your family, at least, right? It is very gray, and again, I'm trying to be objective because if not, I could just say how I felt one way or the other. But I think if you know me and you know my views, you know how I felt about it one way or the other. For me, I felt like it didn't matter because some things were, a lot of the stuff wasn't political. It was human rights, okay? Human right to life. That's really what this year, it's the highlight of, the human right to life. Let's get into the summertime. We're not talking about it now because COVID overtook the media with what it was doing. Like, it had a moment where it was like, oh, it's going to die down. Then we had racial tension at its high. George Floyd, that conversation went away, and then we're back on COVID. George Floyd was a man who had a history, criminal history, so let's not deny that first and foremost. But does that supersede his right to life? 2016, you had some racial tension heighten, and it's a big deal here in America, because United States of America, because we have a history with slavery. And not to say that other countries don't, but ours, we're more like a melting pot where you have people from all parts of the world all here in the U.S. That's what makes us great. That's what makes us unique. You can go to other countries in the world, it's maybe just that one culture, and that's why they don't have the same tension we have, but it is what it is. Every year, especially every 4 years, right, it feels like there's another argument over what needs to change when it comes to race relations. And that could be something from flags, old flags that represent racist movements and times where it's like, we've moved beyond that, but it's still there. It's still there. It's kind of like, oh, that's our history, though. And it is, but does it belong on public roads and streets where you bring up children and they have to be reminded of this, that, and the third? I don't know. I don't think so. I believe if it's history, it should go in a museum. And, statues and things like that, those are to celebrate heroes. Those are to celebrate moments that we're proud of. If we're not proud of certain things, put them in a museum so that you can see and appreciate them for what they were and not worry about them being desecrated. Right? People tearing down statues and people standing up saying, well, that was my history and that's my uncle and blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm sure your uncle was a great guy. But if your uncle did some crappy things to other people, or his views would have been against people who look like me or this person or that one, being able to walk the streets today, or being able to date who they want to date, whether that's a man dating another man, or a black man with a white woman, or the opposite of that, or just whatever, right? That stuff should all be in a museum. So that's always the result of one of these killings or injustices, where what you want is reform, and instead it's like, well, because of such, such, and such, we're going to cancel Dukes of Hazzard because of the Confederate flag. No one's asking for that. It's a TV show. If you don't like seeing the Confederate flag on it, don't watch it. That was a sign of the times to have that kind of flag. So we got oversensitive with certain things that weren't as serious, whereas the serious things, that's what we needed to attack. We needed to attack those things. So, you had Colin Kaepernick, who had been taking a knee and, was supposedly blackballed from the NFL. I say supposedly because some people may see this and not agree with that. He had opportunities, they say, to get a job working with different teams, but for whatever reason that didn't happen. That's his business. What I can tell you is people felt like him taking a knee was disrespecting the flag. So soldiers fought in wars so that you could have the right to take a knee in objection to the flag, so that you could have that freedom. And so, whether or not that's respectful or disrespect, we had lots of debates between family and friends over something like that, because football is supposed to be our escape from real world problems. But you can't ignore the fact that these guys are people too. They have their own problems, their own concerns. So look, this video is running on long enough. We're going to cut it right here. I'm going to pick back up and continue talking about this, the police brutality, George Floyd, getting to my points, and we'll get back into what the rest of the year entailed as far as what directly happened to me. I appreciate you guys. I love you. Tell me what you think. Let me know in the comments. What was your 2020 like? We're not done yet, though. This is just part one. Look at this like my VH1. I love the 2020. We'll be right back. Captain Sensation.